Good morning, all Federation starships in the Alpha, Beta, Gamma, and Delta quadrants. This is Rediscovering the Federation on the Movers and Shakers Unlimited Network. I am your host, Captain Josh Pritchett, head of the Northern Virginia Star Trek Meetup Group, and I am joined again by my partner in crime, Mr. Chris Pavone. Chris, good morning.
Good morning, Josh. Buenos días para todos nuestros oyentes. How are you this morning?
Oh, I am full of Roctagino and Gah and ready to face the day.
Well, I'm glad one of us is.
So, we had another big episode of Discovery this week. Some news about the upcoming Star Trek Section 31 movie. And a few other things to get into, Chris. So, what do you say we get into it now?
Let's fly.
Let's fly. All right. So, starting with a recap of this week's episode, our crew has discovered that the next clue in the progenitors technology race is at a place called the gallery. It's basically this intergalactic library called the repository, which all known races throughout the galaxy have donated artifacts, books, all sorts of things to this traveling library that moves across the galaxy every so often. And now it is in the Badlands, which, as many of you will remember from Deep Space Nine, was the place where the Maquis hid out during right before the Dominion War. So they arrive at the Badlands and are greeted with a message from a female Afrosian named Hyrel. For those of you who recall Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, the Federation president was also an Afrosian, but Hyrel is the first Afrosian we've ever met that we actually learned their name. So, Hyrel essentially guides them to where the book depository is in the Badlands. And of course, it's rough sailing because, well, if it wasn't rough sailing, it wouldn't be called the Badlands. Well, they finally get there, and the repository has a nice calming field around it, so it's safe for discovery. And Hyrel informs Captain Burnham that they also have an artifact from Quajon, and that they have noticed in their scans that they have one Quajonian there. Obviously, it's Book. So they decide to beam down together to the repository. Meanwhile, the Breen are having a funeral for Locke, which Maul is allowed to attend. At which case Maul announces that she can get them to the technology to bring Locke back to life, and asks only to aid them in this glorious quest. But it's pretty obvious that, one, the progenitor is beginning not to care so much about Locke, but just getting this technology. But Maul plans to bring Locke back to life. She announces that she wants to use this technology to bring him back from the dead. Chris.
So the Primarch then tells, okay, we're going to do this, but there better not be any other surprises here, because this is it. And so they too start the journey to the Eternal Gallery and Archive, where the Discovery crew is now on, and it's beautiful, folks. It is beautiful, based on a real-life library in Toronto. Of course, the Toronto one is probably not that size, but it is beautiful. It looks, dare I say it, Harry Potter-esque. And so it's probably the most beautiful thing I've seen on Discovery this season. And so they're taken to a room, and where Hyrel provides them with, and they walk through these intricate And I'm sure this part, it must be true, like, the layers of books, and takes her to a room and presents her with the book and leaves Michael there, and then takes Book to a second viewing room and there provides him with an artifact saying, like, could you please tell us what this is? Because this was left many years ago. And so he opens a wooden box, and it turns out to be two pieces of the world root. As some of you may remember, in Quajon, they had the giant tree network that spun throughout the entire planet, and that helped connect them to the world. And so when he left, of course, he didn't have time to like take a sapling. And so these are two pieces of the world root, which I guess in theory could be used to bring back at least the network of trees and perhaps Quajon in general. But that's probably for like the last two episodes. So he's very overcome emotionally, and Hyrule tells him, listen, since you're one of the last survivors of the planet, we consider this yours. And so please take it. And if you have need for use it, and just please tell us afterwards. That's the only thing we ask, like, what use did you put it to? And so he's like, okay, I'm going to take this. Meanwhile, the scene shifts back to Burnham, and she opens the book and she finds something there, which is another piece of metal, and touches it and basically passes out, wakes up, and sees where she was before, yet she's not. And then she sees someone in Hyrule's robes, but it's Book, and she deduces that she's in a mind puzzle. And so the clue is to find the clue. She has to get out of there, but she has to like figure out how to get out of there. There's a lot of back and forth, and clearly it's thrown her a little bit that the person chosen to sort of be her guide is Book. And so she goes through like some library cards and indexes and begins to think, well, this is all about history, and like they were all concerned about they had to leave this technology until the time came that someone could use it beneficially. So that's about history. So I'm going to go look up the history of the Dominion War, because that is where this clue probably is, because C lived during the time of the Dominion War. And so C, being the Beta Z scientist, who, by the way, is also revealed that C ended up her days as a curator at the library after leaving the clues somewhere there. And Book hologram is not being very useful. Meanwhile, on back at the real archive, they discover Burnham like passed out on the floor, they being Hyrule and Book. And so they call in Raynor and the doc, and the doc is like, listen, like, she's in this mindscape right now. I don't know how to help her, and beaming her on board Discovery, because he has to dematerialize and rematerialize, that might break the link, and like the consequences to that might be very bad for her. So I don't know how or what we can do besides just leaving her here. But that becomes an issue as well, because Hyrule says, like, listen, we detected an incoming green ship. So Discovery goes and hides out of Raynor within the plasma fields. And so the plasma fields cover up the sensors of all incoming ships. And so they can hide there and just kind of watch what's happening. And Hyrule says, like, I know how to deal with, like, people like this, like cultures that are like, not exactly predisposed to nice amenities. But clearly she's overmatched, because, she tries to talk with them, and the Primarch's like, I want to go there now, and you're going to give me what I want. And she says, like, you know what, we're going to terminate this conversation here, perhaps thinking, well, that's the one way we're going to get rid of them. But the Primarch ship is so large that it can go through the Badlands. Also, another homage to the Badlands is that's where the Voyager was initially lost, and goes through because the mass of the ship to the Badlands, and gets there. And Hyrule tells Burnham and Raynor and everyone else, listen, I'm going to have to raise shields now, because they're here, and like they mean business. And so we've got our crew trapped on the station with the Breen knocking on the door to come in. We've got Michael trying to find unsuccessfully a way out of the mindscape with a not very helpful Book. And Josh, do you want to take it from there?
Okay. So Michael tries to map her way around the labyrinth, because she thinks that's the way that's going to help her figure out the way out and also get the clue. So Imaginary Book provides her with a bucket of sand to use to make her guide through the library in her mind. Meanwhile, Book and Rayner try to mount a defense to prevent the Breen when their soldiers deploy. Thing is, the Breen are using a harmonic wave to try to bore a hole through the repository shields, and use that as a energy tunnel to get their soldiers through to the repository. So Discovery figures this out, and they come up and they manage to come up with a way to disrupt it, but some of their soldiers get through. So now the Breen, because Rayner and Book have managed to defeat this handful of Breen soldiers, they managed to defeat them. The Primar knows that Discovery is in the area somewhere. And they don't know how many forces are inside of the repository. However, at this point, Maul is starting her plan to try to turn the crew on the Primarch is starting to bear fruit. She is pointing out to the first officer, that the Primarch doesn't give a damn about you guys. He, this and that. And it's starting to have some effect on them. Burnham finally ends up back in the center reading room where she started with Imaginary Book. And she's frustrated. She's getting angry. And Imaginary Book won't tell her what the test is, and just tells she's failing the test. And he, but basically hints that we have to know that you're the right person for this. And Burnham gets frustrated and storms off. Meanwhile, the library around her is getting darker and darker because her mind is going to shut down if she is found unworthy. So, right now, Rayner and Book return to the reading room. Book has been injured, needs to get to sick bay. So Burnham comes back to the imaginary reading room, and she's calmed down, and she finally admits that. The imaginary book asks, "Are you afraid to die?" She says, "No, I'm not afraid to die. I'm afraid that I'm going to be seen as a failure, that I'm unworthy of this uniform, that I'm not worthy to command." And I am, I got so mad at the real Book, and I didn't tell him these things and how much it means to me to be the captain, and but I care about him. I love him. It's just I can't, it's just she needs to have both these things. And finally she says, so, as it looks like the lights are dimming, so she says, so what was the whole test about? And the imaginary book says, you passed. And basically it seems kind of simple in hindsight, but because the scientist who put the clue in the repository was a neuroscientist, it should have been more of a contest of the mind. It should have been confronting the insights herself. And so the imaginary book tells her that in another one of the reading rooms, there is an artifact in a glass case where the final artifact is hidden. So Michael wakes up and leads Hugh, Rayner, and Book to the other reading room where they find the clue. Then the Breen beam in, but Discovery beams our heroes out, and Discovery has to draw their fire. And so Burnham has to negotiate with the Primarch. And she says, okay, look, just stop shooting at them. We'll give you the clues. and because she's counting on the Primarch not to honor his word, because she's made him swear a brain oath that he will not fire, that he'll cease attacking Discovery and the library and everything. So he agrees, but of course, Discovery gets the map coordinates before they send the clue over. And then the Primarch, once he has the clues, orders that they open fire on both the library and Discovery. Maul protests and gets shoved down. They open fire on Discovery. They seem to be just taking hits, but Burnham has come up with a plan where they will discharge a bunch of stuff out of the loading docks and also vent their plasma from the warp nacelles while they simultaneously jump to the location of the final of where the technology is supposed to be. Meanwhile, Maul is calling the Primarch out on breaking his word and pointing out that he does not care about his soldiers. And she points out that she is the wife of their sovereign and that Locke will not agree to this. And the Primarch says he no longer cares about Locke. He doesn't care about bringing him back. He is going to take the power for himself. And that, she points out that this is going to cause a war between the Primarch and all the other factions and all this other stuff. And ultimately, the brain begin to turn on the Primarch. Maul kills the Primarch and it suddenly ends up becoming their leader and declares long may Locke reign, and that they're going to get the final piece. Meanwhile, Discovery has come out of the out of spore space 25 light years away from where the final planet is, but the spore drive has been damaged and the warp drive has been damaged too, so they have to figure out a way to get there. So that is more or less where we're left at, Chris. So with that, I think we should go ahead and do the good, the bad, and the Gorn, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay. So what do we think was good about this episode? Obviously, we really liked the library a lot.
Oh, God, yes. I love the library. The library, again, as I said before, probably the most beautiful thing I've seen this season. I've been to Toronto, but I had no idea this locale existed. So I would imagine it's going to become a very popular place now in Toronto to go visit. I mean, I want to go visit right now. I mean,
Yeah.
As I said, the way it was structured, and I understand that the way they filmed it with the infinite look is probably they just took different sections and placed it one on top of the other. But that means that the basic architecture there is there. And agreeing with friend of the show, Michael Pea, about that is the season's been awesome, and that has been especially awesome, I might say. That library visually was stunning, and the idea that such a thing of beauty actually exists just is like makes me think there may be hope for us yet.
Yeah, it was like my idea of heaven, just an infinite library full of books. That's, you mentioned Harry Potter. I kind of was thinking more of the library from the Sandman's Castle in the graphic novel series, The Sandman, that contains all the books that have ever been written and have never been written but were imagined by somebody. So yeah, that was really amazing. Beautiful, well lit. The cinematography this season has been tremendous.
Mr. Atos would be proud of that library.
Yes.
Mr. Atos would be proud of that library.
Yes, he would. He would be very proud of it. Another thing I really liked is this season there's been this recurring idea of using somewhat obscure races or background races a lot more in this season. As we mentioned, Hyrel is an Efrosian, and she is actually the first Efrosian that had their name given. We saw one Efrosian in Star Trek IV who was the navigator on a starship that was disabled by the whale probe. Then, of course, there was the Efrosian Star Federation president in Star Trek VI. So this was really nice that we saw an Afrosian character. We hope we see more of them. I think we've seen some of them in the background in episodes of Picard and other shows. Um, so it's good that they're kind of, we've mainly only seen them in the movies. It'd be good to see more of them more often. I also happen to notice that there was one of the aliens from the Star Trek Next Generation episode, The Lonely, was one of the people looking through books. It was, I think, the ones that looked like they were evolved from dogs or something, and there was an Andorian walking by. So that was a nice touch, that we're seeing more of these alien characters. Um, I also think that I think it was really interesting. It was, very Star Trek traditional style storytelling that had, Michael going through her mind and trying to work things out. Um, it was, very consistent with the writing style of Star Trek. That it is at times somewhat cerebral, but also has a nice balance of action in there. Chris, what else did you like about this episode?
Well, there's two things I also liked. One was I just like the character of Harrell so much. I mean, how I'm going back to something he said. How fun to have a book visit me in the library for a change. Um, and the fact that she kind of when Burnham's like, "Oh, we've got to do this," and like, "I have these questions," he was just kind of like, "Okay, chill, like Burnham, you're not that important." I mean, I liked that character a lot. So like I've been there, I've seen this, like let's move on. I liked it a lot, and this is gonna sound a bit weird because I'm gonna criticize her in the bad part, but on the good part, I want to say that the individual performance given by Soneca Martin Green when she was revealing her inner turmoil and what she feared, I think the performance by the actors was very good. Um, so again, this is going to sound a little weird because I'm going to criticize this in the bad, but I want to say that her performance um, was like exceptional. And I also want to say, for me, the good was Rayner gets a little bit more to show his background, because there's a point where Book says, like, "Wow, you're thinking about this like a hunter," and he says, "Yeah, well, I had to fight the Breen for so many years to survive," because they're thinking about where they're going to put themselves uh, when the Breen start coming in, and his strategy is effective because you can see on the map within the Primarch ship how like all the symbols of the Breen soldiers begin to be disappear one by one by one. And that's Rayner and Book, but that's Rayner's strategy because he figures out, okay, which is the best way to take them all out. So that's my other good from the episode.
Yeah, Rayner, I think we've kind of established from the beginning he is definitely a more tactician kind of guy. Uh, he thinks more in tactics because he's been living in a universe that until recently has been in deep conflict with the Orions and the Breen and other groups, the Gorn, etc. So he's kind of coming from a perspective. Starfleet is being more military and less exploration. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely a great tactician in this episode, and he's really showing what he's best at it. Um, Another thing, I agree, and I agree with you that line about it's so nice to have a book come visit me, which was very endearing. And I really hope Hyrel makes a comeback in Academy. That would be great if maybe if the Academy had to be moved to the repository. That would be really interesting, wouldn't it? It's just a thought. Um, I have to say that I think we're gonna, I know we were talking about this before the show, but I liked Maul. I like the direction her character started to go in. I know some people have not been crazy about her, but I think the actress playing her has done a great job with the character. And I think her motives are fairly easy to understand. And because, the thing about Star Trek villains, and you are wearing the villain shirt, a lot of them start off from a perspective of doing what they believe is right. But as we find out, the way they go about it is quite evil at times, but from their perspective, it's the right thing to do, and that always makes the best villains. I think, in my opinion, whether it's Star Trek or Star Wars or Doctor Who, it makes them more interesting to engage with.
Oh, is it noon or past noon right now?
It is now 10 minutes past noon.
No wonder this guy is being so like. Sorry, I've got my Tribble here, and I usually feed him Klingons at noon. So wait,
get that thing away! It's disgusting.
There you go. Oh, whoa, whoa! Don't bite my hand! Don't bite my hand! Okay, to be happy now. Sorry, folks. I have to feed my Tribble because, as you know, the Tribbles don't exist now in Discovery's timeline because the Tribbles ate all the Klingons. He gets cranky if I don't feed him. So, sorry, folks. We go back to our regular scheduled program now.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Where was
the bad? We're going to talk about the bad.
All right. What was bad about this episode, Chris? Go ahead.
Well, I'm going to nitpick a little bit here, Josh. So one of my things is this station is the most precious reservoir of artifacts from different assembled cultures, right? And so if I am giving you like my most precious thing, wouldn't I also insist on like, okay, I'm going to give you this to protect my most precious stuff? Like the only thing they've got is a shield. I mean, they've got no phasers, they've got no photon torpedoes, they've got like nothing except a shield. At the very least, like an alarm to go off or like to let other cultures and civilizations know, like, hey, your stuff is in danger right now. At the very least, leave. And I understand they couldn't leave because, you know, we've got the Discovery crew on there, and then the Discovery crew wouldn't know where they went. But we know that they have the ability to move the library. At least throw us a line within the dialogue of Hyrule saying, well, normally under these circumstances, we would just leave, but we can't because like you all are here right now. So we're going to like just activate the shield and stay. But it seems to me the library should have a better way to like defend themselves. At the very least, like give us a line about how we're just going to jump away. And speaking of the library jumping, Hyrule says, we've been here in the Badlands 100 years. It's a great place to hide out and we feel safe. Great. Yes, I agree with that. But in the previous episode, Tilly had said they jump every 50 years and they're here now. So it's like, I think there's some inconsistencies in the filming and someone didn't go back to check out that line. So it's like, have you been there 100 years or have you been there 50 years? Which is it? And then focusing on the archive itself. So when Discovery first is outside the Badlands, you know, yes, there's a beacon. And it says, okay, like we know you're there, but I thought the disruption from the Badlands plasma fields was so intense that sensors would not work outside. So how could they tell, even with their probe outside the relay station, that Discovery had just arrived? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it seems to me that they would not have been able to get a signal from the relay because of all the distortion in the plasma fields. But I got more, but Josh, I'll let you like chime in here.
Well, I kind of thought that, even though I did like, some of what I did say some good things about Maul, that I liked the direction the characters started to go in, being this villain you could sort of sympathize with. And as I've said, I always think they're the best kind of villains to create for a TV, for anything. This idea that, oh, okay, I kill the Primarch.
Yeah.
Now I'm the chief. I'm the boss. We've seen that with a lot of characters in Star Trek. Most notably, of course, my people, the Klingons. Okay. And it would just be nice if that wasn't something that was just overdone. That, okay, kill your commanding officer, you get the job. Okay, because you've proven you're stronger. I I mean, we can interpret that as she is, because she's the wife of the sovereign. That gives her street cred with the Breen and gives her the right to challenge for leadership. But honestly, we've seen that done so many times in Star Trek. Like obviously, like I said, the Klingons, and a little bit with the Romulans and the Ferengi, and obviously the Terran Empire. But it would just be kind of nice to not, maybe something to maybe, it seems like it's overdone. But I guess it's something that works, so they just stuck with it and they just got rid of him because obviously they were setting up for Maul becoming the head of taking control of the Brain faction and going after the technology to bring Locke back to life, however that is going to look. I think that that was kind of my only gripe, but it's a minor gripe. It's like, okay, we're kind of coming to the end of the story here, and we need to resolve this. So, and I think I have more sympathy for the Maul character than I think some fans have had, but that was kind of the only thing I agree though with Chris. That, yeah, that you'd think that the library would have a greater sense of defense of some type, or could have leaped away right when Michael and the crew returned. So in other words, like trying to fake their deaths was unnecessary. Like, yeah, I mean, right at the last second when Michael and the gang beam back, Hyrule and the library could have escaped. However, they do it. But I guess they figured, okay, we have to have one more firefight because, of course, that obviously sets up the whole thing where Maul shows that this guy doesn't care about you. I care about you, and I care about our true leader, Locke. So this is what they're going to do.
Yeah. So
our friend Michael P just chimed in, lazy writing, and yeah, there is some of that there.
So on the theme of lazy writing, there's two other things I disliked about what went down. I mean, one is that, okay, yes, good plan that we're gonna fake that like you destroyed us, but wouldn't someone on the Breen ship analyze the debris and said like, okay, yeah, this is debris, but it's not enough debris for a ship of the size of Discovery. I mean, granted, they could all congratulate themselves and pat themselves in the back and say like, hey, we vaporized them, way to go us. But I think someone would have looked closer at the amount of debris. For example, we've seen how much debris is left when you destroy a starship in season 2, episode 10 of Strange New Worlds, when the Ticonderoga gets absolutely destroyed by the Gorn. There's a lot of mass still there. So I think someone would have looked at it and said, yeah, there's not enough mass here. Then the other thing that I didn't like was the name of the show is Star Trek Discovery. It is not the Book and Burnham show. There are other people on this show.
Yeah.
The portrayal of Captain Burnham is becoming too much like Captain Kirk. Like, oh, I the one who's going to beam down. I'm the one who's going to get the girl. I'm the one who's going to do this. I'm the one who's going to do that. And like, no, I mean, she is morphing into Captain Kirk before our eyes. Less is more. I mean, let other people in the ensemble shine. It is an ensemble. And yes, I understand in the writing why they said, well, Book is the one most on her mind because of like what happened in the discussion before they beamed down. But it still should not have been Book as the guide. I mean, why is it Book is the one who goes to Trill? Book is the one who goes to the archive. Like, it's always Book and her like with the notable exception of Whistle Speak, once he goes down with Tilly, even in the episodes he makes the comment, "Oh, I wish this would have been Tilly." Yes, it should have been Tilly. It should have been anyone else. And also, there are no Beta Zeds on this entire ship. Though at the Beta Zed as a whole decide like we're not going to be part of the Federation anymore. We're out, folks. Thank you. If you're going for an artifact that is from Beta Z, wouldn't you bring a Beta Zoid with you just in case? So it's just I liked her performance when she showed the what she feared the most, but at the same time, I think most of us could have figured out, given her character portrayal, this is what she feared the most. I mean, I would have liked Stamets to go down and Stamets to be in there because I actually don't know what Stamets fears the most, or what would have been the outcome with Stamets there. But just send other people. And speaking of other people, again, who's Lieutenant Galler? I mean, like, where's Onisiku and where's Detmar? Is it taking him that much time to take the ISS back to Federation headquarters? I mean,
Yeah.
give me more than just Burnham and Book. It is not the Burnham and Book show. It is Star Trek Discovery, and there's an ensemble. You're barely giving us any Reno. I mean, all the scenes of Reno that we've seen probably could have been filmed in a day. Give us more of the ensemble. Don't do a Kirk on us and just give us Burnham and Book 24/7.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think, you need to have more of those characters. I mean, we saw a little bit about that in the scene where they're trying to figure out how they're going to hide because their cloaking device won't work in the Badlands. But at the same time, okay, we could do more scenes like that. Give these characters more to do and get to know more about them.
I mean, I really enjoyed the episode where it was Burnham and it was Rayner and it was Stamets. I mean, why not have Rayner beam down, which is the role of the number one, and then have his guide be Burnham? Why not do that? I mean, it would have still made sense. Like, she stays aboard the ship, Rayner goes down there, and as part of the development of Rayner's character, because I don't know what he fears the most yet.
Yeah.
Like I said, I could have guessed what Burnham was fearing the most, but it would have been interesting to see that dynamic again of Rayner coming to terms with his past that we have learned more about, and have Soneca Martin Green's character Burnham be his guide. It just Burnham Book is getting tired.
Yeah, it is, and you're right. That would have actually made more sense to have done a. Not that it wasn't cool that Rayner helping and Book setting up traps to throw off the brain wasn't a good idea. It still, it would have been kind of cool if we could have seen, what more into Rayner's psyche, which is one reason I'm hoping, again, he's another character we get to keep for Star Trek Academy.
But on that same note, that's why I would have wanted to see more of Rayner now, because I mean, we talk about, oh, it'd be great if this person goes there, if this person goes there. The reality is, not all of those people are going to go to Academy. So we got to learn about them now while this show is going on, because there's no guarantee they're moving to the other show.
Right. Yeah. And especially just from a practical thing, because a lot of the actors are invited to cons. So it would be more interesting to give them more to talk about.
Yes.
So that, more people are interested in going to their panels.
Yes.
So just to help them out. Let's move to the Gorn. We're, pick up some time here. So any other things that stand out that are somewhat Gornish for us?
Well, I think that, and this is, we're going over to predictions now a little bit, but I think clearly the fact that he now has a piece of the tree root means that somehow, some way, we're going to see the progenitors technology used to quite possibly recreate Krajan as a whole.
Yeah. And I think obviously there's going to be some way that Book and Burnham get back together, but that's kind of predictable. Whatever. I'm, and I did think though that Rayner, going back to what we were saying, Rayner as the tactician was brilliant. I liked how he used the line "you gelatinous a-holes." That was kind of funny. I just noticed that on the rewatch this morning. Um, you know, they're I think you're right. I think that they're going to try to find some way to bring Krejon back. I don't know about the individual people.
No,
It's
not
going to be
people.
interesting to see how this works out. I do know. I mean, it kind of wondering: are we going to have a kind of a last couple of episodes are going to be kind of a zombie fest, or what's going to happen with this? Um,
I, I mean, I think we also seem to be heading towards the direction of um, they're going to bring back Locke, and then Locke is the emperor of the Breen. I mean, it seems that way. That's where we're headed.
yeah, but is he going to be the Locke that um, Maul fell in love with, or is he going to be something else? Or it's going to be something worse. It's going to be something better. It's going to be, usually it's been my experience when you're bringing people back from the dead, it doesn't ever work out very well.
No, and
Obviously,
I remember the thing magic comes at a price. What would be interesting is if they do discover the progenitor tech and they discover to bring back Locke, you need a life force given in return. And so then if Maul would have to sacrifice herself to bring back Locke.
right. Yeah. Yeah, that's that would be interesting. Is would that happen? Would Maul sacrifice herself, or would she sacrifice somebody else to bring back? I think more likely she'd sacrifice somebody else.
Would Book have to sacrifice himself to bring back Krejon?
I think he would. I mean, honestly, I think he would.
Sacrifice yourself. Yes, yes.
That would make you very happy. That's like an early Christmas. That'd be an early birthday present for you, my friend.
Yes, it would.
So, moving slightly off of Discovery, I wanted to bring up a couple of things about Star Trek Section 31.
Are we allowed to talk about Section 31?
Well, maybe in slightly hushed tones. Maybe we should have the producer, blur our faces and do that kind of
I think so.
weird kind of voiceover thing you see them do on the news for whistleblowers. But maybe
I'm going to cover my face as we talk about this.
Yeah. Okay, so here's what we know so far. It is looking like Georgia will not be returning exactly to the time point where Discovery left the 23rd century, which was some years just before Captain Kirk became captain of the Enterprise, but is actually going to be going into what we call the Lost Era. Now, for those of you who don't know what that means, Lost Era is anything that happens between when Captain Kirk disappeared off of the Enterprise B and fell into the spatial ribbon.
The Nexus.
The Nexus, thank you. And the beginning of Star Trek The Next Generation, which, of course, encompasses the Romulan attacks on Narendra 3 and Khitomer, the Cardassian War, the destruction, whatever happened to the Enterprise B, the destruction of the Enterprise C, the Cardassian occupation of Bajor, the birth of Jean-Luc Picard, various other things. So it is going to take place in this kind of void, which is somewhere around the late 23rd and early 24th centuries. We do know that there is somebody who will be playing a very young Rachel Garrett. Rachel Garrett, of course, was captain of the Enterprise C, who's going to be featured in this episode. So it's going. The only thing we got listed is that Philippa Georgia, is going to basically be helping Section 31 protect the Federation from some big thing. So we don't know what it is yet, but obviously the Guardian of Forever has a purpose for her as well. So we know Philippa Georgia is a character, a former empress of the Terran Empire, who has begun to love what the Federation represents, but she is still dangerous enough that she might go to extremes that nobody else in the Federation or Starfleet is willing to go through to protect the Federation. So we do know there's a huge amount of stuff there for her, the writers of this thing, to play with. There's so much stuff. I'm hoping that there will be more stories that will come from the Lost Era. There was a line of books that was written that featured a lot of characters, like the TOS characters in their later years, but also the Next Generation and DS9 and Voyager characters when they were younger, like obviously Tuvok and characters like that. So anything is possible. I mean, who knows? Maybe the story is going to revolve around protecting a young Jean-Luc Picard so he can fulfill his destiny. We'll have to wait and see. But we've got another year till we see this film. Yes, Michael, I too have faith that they will nail the landing. So, Chris?
Well, I've been a little critical of Discovery, but overall, I do like the idea that they took the risk of showing us what the future looks like. And I think that's the other part of what I look forward to in Academy. It's like, while I have issues with Discovery not showing us what happened when the Tribbles ate all the Klingons, like what has happened on Bajor, what has happened with the Narsicans. Like I mentioned this in prior episodes. Like I have an issue with like them not showing us everything that has happened to the civilizations that we knew, but I give them a huge amount of credit for storytelling set in the future. And I just think that storytelling about stuff that we sort of know about in the past is not, for me, it's not groundbreaking. I mean, I don't necessarily need to know like what happened that tight space between the Enterprise B and C. Like I have always thought Star Trek should be about the future, like what is happening next, what is happening afterwards. And I think Discovery has a lot of credit for showing us, okay, 800 years. They haven't shown us everything, but they've shown us a lot. And so storytelling focus on what came before, it's not really my thing.
Yeah. This does kind of have a vibe of a prequel, but more of a prequel to the Next Generation and not TOS, which is what Enterprise and the first two seasons of Discovery were. But yeah, it is kind of a prequel to the Next Generation era. I don't mind them filling in some of the bits that, if anything, look, we get to see Michelle Yeoh playing Philippa Georgiou again.
What was that you said before Discovery? I think you said something.
Yeah, Enterprise, the prequel.
The ship somehow.
Yeah.
Sorry,
okay.
Not ringing a bell.
Okay. Michael agrees with you. Let's move on to new things. Well, of course we're going to get that with Academy. I mean, I'm hoping that somewhere in the 32nd century they're going to build a new Enterprise. Because Enterprise has always been the ship of destiny that's been the symbol of Starfleet in its best and worst times. And I think that the Federation has entered a brand new golden age where, it looked like it was on the brink. It had, worlds had left it. Now worlds are rejoining. It has become the galaxy-wide superpower of the city on the hill and everything. So, yeah, I mean, it would be nice if they would create an Enterprise for another Star Trek, another Starship Enterprise later on.
And maybe this is something we're going to have to discuss in another episode, but I actually have less of a problem if there not being an Enterprise, because the other thing I liked about Discovery is like, it is not the Enterprise, it is Discovery. Even in Picard, I like the fact that, it was the Titan, it wasn't the Enterprise, because the Federation should be more than just one ship. And that's what I loved about Deep Space Nine. That's what I liked about Voyager. It was things that happen on another ship. I mean, Enterprise will always be like, there for us, and it's going to be like, the shining light. But the idea of a Federation means adventures of other space stations, other ships. So
Mhm.
I, I'm liking that we're going to have an academy. I like that's in the future. And so I am less tied down to the idea that there has to be an Enterprise. I mean, it will always be there, but this is a Federation, and there are many other ships.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's just yeah, there are other starships, and we that was the whole purpose of Deep Space Nine and Voyager and Discovery is seeing okay, it isn't just the Enterprise. There's this big giant uh, thing called the Federation and Starfleet that encompasses so much of a quadrant of this galaxy that we're in, and it would be nice to see other ships, but honestly, there's a sentimental value, I think, to having a new Starship Enterprise launching at some future point, um, you know, and having this new crew and everything. I mean, I will tell you, just going back to the Section 31 thing, I think it'd be really kind of cool is if you brought in Ethan Peck, or or just telling show stories about this middle period between the beginning of Generations and the beginning of the next generation, in which we might see and Ethan Peck come back as an older Spock and showing what he was doing, in a horror. But it'd be nice to keep going forward to the 32nd century, or I'm still holding out for Legacy. That I think Legacy would be awesome.
Legacy would be nice. I mean, but I like what you said. Keep on the 32nd century, and who knows what things we might discover. We may discover that Gorn have become vegetarians.
Doubtful. Yeah, I don't think that's their thing. I think they're going to be, the big carnivorous creatures they've always been. So, but at any rate, we are getting close to time here. So, I think next week we are going to be
Next
doing
week,
this later in the afternoon.
our producer has sworn a green oath that he is going to be with us in person.
Yes, we're all going to be in the same room together next Sunday afternoon, which is a very big rarity for this show. Oh, well, let's say, want to be great at the final episode answers a lot of these questions. Yes, that would be great, Mike. Hopefully that will happen. But in the meantime, I've sent our producer a link to an interview I did a couple weeks ago promoting my short story, Enkidu, which is featured in the Bigfoot anthology, Knocks and Howls. So you might want to check that out. And in the meantime, that book is available on Amazon. So, Chris, where can everybody find you?
Breaking news. I just heard that the second part of our producer's green oath, which cannot be broken, is that he will be bringing both of us Coke Zeros next week.
Yes. Oh, excellent. Code Zero.
Yes, Coke
Code
Zero.
Zero. Yes.
Bringing
That'd
us
be
Coke
good.
Zero.
Yes.
In the meanwhile, until he brings the Coke Zero, fulfilling his green oath that is unbreakable, I can be found. I can be found on Instagram at ReDiscovering.
And you can find me on Facebook under Josh Pritchett Jr. and also on the Star Trek Northern Virginia. I'm sorry, the Northern Virginia Star Trek Meetup site on meetup.org. And we have a lot of great events coming up if you'd like to join us, including June 22nd. We will be going to the Air and Space Museum downtown Washington, D.C., where we will be seeing, among many things, the original USS Enterprise model that was used in the original Star Trek series. So until then, I'm remaining Josh Pritchett.
I'm Chris Pavone. Peace and long life.
Live long and prosper, everybody. Goodbye. Thanks for joining us this